Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Tuesday, February 18th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 494 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Of course, appreciate all of those tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms where the show can be found. Today, we're going to be talking all things Jets. As always, we're going to break down two potential free agent signings for the New York Jets who have connections with the new regime. And we'll also take a look at some news around Morgan Moses, as he isn't expected to return to the New York Jets in 2025. We will give you my thoughts on that and what it means for the Jets offensive line and what's next at the right tackle position. As always, before we begin, we got to tell you about our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at BetUS, America's favorite online sportsbook. If you want to get in on any of the sports betting action, check out BetUS and use my link in the description of this video to get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first three deposits up to $2,000. Also, our friends over at SeatGeek. If you're looking for any tickets in sporting events or any tickets in a play, a concert, a show, you name it, SeatGeek has it. And if it's your first time using SeatGeek, use promo code BUBSONSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. If you can buy a ticket for an event, SeatGeek has it. Bubs on Sports, $20 off. And of course, our friends over at Huga House. If you're looking for any brand new Huga House hats that just released, or brand new sweatshirts, or any of their original hats, check them out. And at checkout, use promo code BUBS for 15% off. And in your second purchase with that code, you can get 30% off. So check them out and get yourself some awesome Huga House swag. So here we go, episode 494. Thank you so much for joining me today. Another day, another podcast, more New York Jets news that I wanted to get into. And I want to start today as we continue to get closer here, less than a month away from free agency beginning. Of course, the Jets have a lot of needs offensively and defensively. You can even say special teams as well. We'll need to figure out the kicker situation, which was a complete disaster last year. But wanted to break down two names today. One that was actually brought up in an article by Rich Cimini that I talked a little bit about yesterday, and in a couple different aspects of that article, both Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers leaving, how that impacts him. I also discussed Rick Spielman being impressed on Jackson Dart. But he also mentioned a wide receiver that's got a connection to this regime that I wanted to break down. And I also want to break down a cornerback who has a connection with Aaron Glenn, as two guys that I would totally be on board with the Jets bringing in, and two realistic options for the New York Jets. So we'll start here with the actual report itself. This was from the Rich Cimini article yesterday, or he posted on Sunday. But this was from the article. He said, one free agent to watch is Tim Patrick of the Detroit Lions. An obvious connection to Aaron Glenn, or to coach Aaron Glenn, and an offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrand. Now, not only does Tim Patrick also have a connection to Glenn and Engstrand from his days in Detroit, mainly Engstrand being on the offensive side of the football, but he also has a connection to Darren Muji. They were both in Denver at the same time. Tim Patrick was an undrafted free agent, signed on with the Broncos in 2018, and was there for 7 seasons, or was there rather for 6 seasons, only played 4 seasons. Unfortunately, tore his ACL at the beginning of 2022 in training camp, and then tore his Achilles in 2023. So missed 2 straight seasons. And then last year signed on with the Detroit Lions. Tim Patrick feels like a very realistic option here for the Jets. And You look at this wide receiver core right now, it needs a lot of help, right? With the Aaron Rodgers news, that means most likely Devontae Adams is gone. Not most likely, he is going to be gone. I think the only scenario Devontae Adams has a 1% chance of maybe coming back would be if Derek Carr comes here. But I think that ship has sailed. They've already played together in Vegas. Devontae wants to go out west. He wants to go to a team where he can compete for a championship and try and get a ring here before his time's up in his career. And he'll do that this season, I believe, trying to find that team. He won't return here. And that leaves you a situation with this Jets receiving core, which we've talked about a lot. It's Garrett Wilson and a whole lot of question marks because not only is Devontae gone, Allen Lazard is going to be gone. So you look at this situation of Garrett Wilson, and then you find yourself with guys like Xavier Gipson, guys like Malachi Corley, Irv Charles, Brandon Smith, just nobody's behind Wilson. It's basically Wilson, and I wouldn't even say question marks because it's not like it's unproven guys. It's basically just guys that are flat out not NFL level receivers. Maybe Malachi Corley at best can be a wide receiver 4 for this team. So, okay, you have a wide receiver 4 and that's it. You need some experience. You need some help. You're going to need a wide receiver 2 and a wide receiver 3, and the Jets need to maybe get creative there, potentially find somebody in the draft and then find somebody in free agency, multiple players in free agency. And that's where Tim Patrick really comes up here is he's a veteran guy, been in the league since 2018, has played 7 seasons, entering his 8th season, was in Denver for 6 seasons, only played 4 of them, of course, with the 2 injuries he suffered back-to-back years in 2022 and 2023, and then spent last season in Detroit. Is he a T. Higgins? Is he a top-of-the-line wide receiver? No, but can Tim Patrick come in here and be a solid wide receiver 3 with maybe wide receiver 2 upside in this system that he already knows that he played in last year? I certainly think so. I think it would be a solid, affordable, cheap addition and an NFL caliber receiver to add to a room that lacks that right now, minus Garrett Wilson. You look at some of Tim Patrick's numbers. I'm going to take a look here first at 2020 and 2021, were his 2 best seasons in Denver, and really was on his way to potentially really kind of taking off in Denver. Denver actually extended him after the 2021 season as he really started to grow and develop in that system. And then unfortunately the injuries happened. He left, moved on this year and then goes to Detroit for 2024. But you look at those 2 seasons in Denver from 2020 to 2021. He had 31 games played, 104 receptions on 164 targets, 1,476 yards, 14.1 yards per reception, and 11 touchdowns. So really solid numbers for a guy that was being asked at that time to essentially be the 3rd wide receiver behind Judy and then Cortland Sutton. He was kind of the wide receiver 2. 3 wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2. Sutton was the one. Him and Judy were kind of the 2 guys behind him, of course. Now, last year in a very loaded wide receiver room, of course, headlined by Amon-Ra St. Brown, not just a wide receiver room, a loaded offense with Laporta, St. Brown, 2 running backs, right? David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, two monsters. We know how loaded the Lions offense was. Numbers took a little bit of a drop off. That's just because of, everybody else that was getting the ball, and he wasn't a focal point in the offense. That's not what Tim Patrick is meant to do. That's not what he's going to be here, but he fit his role. He had 33 receptions last year on 44 targets, 394 yards, 11.9 yards per reception, 3 touchdowns in 16 games. So bounced back nicely, solid after missing 2 years in a row where he wasn't even able to get to the regular season healthy. Tim Patrick is not an all-pro stud wide receiver, but he's an NFL body. He's an NFL caliber guy that can come in here and potentially fill that void as wide receiver 3. And I think it's very likely that it happens because he's already got the connection with Tanner Engstrand. He already knows the offensive scheme. I also think something else that's interesting about Tim Patrick here is he finished top 5 among wide receivers in run block grade last year. Something the Jets just need to do better overall is running the football. And sometimes that does take, you need your receivers to block. You need your tight ends to be good at blocking. You look at Detroit, the way they were able to run the ball so well, not just do they have good talent back there, but everybody was committed to those run plays. Everybody was committed to blocking on those run plays and doing their job. something the Jets haven't had. That's all about kind of trying to form that identity as well. Just some other numbers on Patrick. His 66.9 overall PFF grade last year was about average among wide receivers. He was 64 out of 98 qualified. His 66 receiving grade was 67th out of 98 qualified. So just a tick below average to about average, which is kind of what you're getting in a wide receiver 3. So a name to look for. Cimini mentions it, has the connection with this coaching staff, has the connection just with this regime in general, going back to his Denver days where Muji and him were there at the same time. And I would also throw this out here about Tim Patrick. He's only had 10 drops in his career, which is actually something that is solid. I think something that you can hang your hat on. To put that in perspective, 13 drops were made by Allen Lazard in his 2 seasons with the Jets. So going back to 2018, Tim Patrick, in 5 years of healthy playing football, he's had 10 drops. Lazard, the last 2 years, 13. So you would have an upgrade from a drop perspective. So Tim Patrick's an interesting name to keep an eye on. Not a guy that's going to take you over the top. That's not what I'm saying. But can he be a solid depth piece behind Garrett Wilson, who's affordable? I think so. And the Jets need that. So that's number 1. Number 2, I'm going to throw this other guy out here. Starting to pick up some steam around him. No real reports. It's just, you look at this roster, you try and think of solutions, what they do in free agency. Might have bidders elsewhere as well because he's experienced player who's had a very nice NFL career is Carlton Davis, right? You look on the defensive side of the football, safety, you're going to need some help, which we'll touch upon here in future episodes. You're, of course, going to need help in other aspects of the offense, linebacker, defensive line, but you're also going to need to figure out your cornerback too alongside Sauce Gardner. Is that Brandon Echols? Is that Quantez Stiggers? Do they rely on those guys in-house? I don't necessarily – I would ideally still want to bring in a veteran and then have that guy potentially compete, or just have Echols and those guys just as solid depth. Echols is also a free agent, so you would have to bring him back too. He's a guy that might not even come back, right? He's not like he's under contract. 2021 pick, doesn't have that 5th-year option, not being a first-round pick, so he'll enter the open market. But Carlton Davis is a really intriguing name. And again, a guy that probably will have potential suitors, but the reason I think Carlton Davis makes a lot of sense for the Jets, number 1, it's a need, but number 2, you look at what he was able to do last year under Aaron Glenn in some of areas was one of his best seasons of his career, right? Spent 6 seasons in Tampa, was a 2018 second-round pick out of Auburn. Tampa Bay brought him in, of course. Spent 6 years there, won the Super Bowl. Something else I think that's to throw out there, right? He's been a part of 2 winning cultures now. Was in Tampa, saw the turnaround with Brady. Little different turnaround where they went all in, but won a Super Bowl, then goes to Detroit, winning culture. I feel like Carlton Davis could be that guy that Glenn brings in as one of those veterans. Every coach, right, has his veterans, has his culture guys that he brings in. I feel like Carlton Davis could be that guy where 1 year in his system last year, he had a very, very productive season for his standards. 56 total tackles, 13 games played, 2 interceptions, 11 passes defended. Finished the year with a 74.5 overall PFF grade, which was a career high, and ranked 29th out of 223 qualified, so top 30 in that perspective, which was well above average. He had a 77.7 run defense grade, 26th out of 223 qualified corners, also well above average. And his 72.1 coverage grade was 38th out of 223 corners, also well above average. That was the tied for highest in his career since his rookie year, 2018. His run defense grade was the 3rd highest mark in his career. And like I mentioned, his 74.5 overall grade was a career high. And so some areas when you dig deep, and I know PFF grades aren't the end all be all, but even you look at some of the numbers and you dig deeper on them, there was some areas last year where he put up numbers near the best that he's ever put up in his career just in 1 season under Aaron Glenn. And I think Carlton Davis is just an intriguing name. You think of a veteran guy, proven, been around, solid piece, had a couple really, really good seasons in Tampa. where he was upwards 18, 19 passes defended, couple interceptions. 2020 was by far his best year, 4 interceptions, 18 passes defended, Super Bowl champion. I just think you look at it, maybe this is one of Glenn's guys that he had in Detroit, brings him over here, and you like the potential replacement of DJ Reed to be Carlton Davis, who is kind of maybe on that same playing level. You kind of look at the numbers, and they're very similar. They're kind of similar in age, similar in, I would say skill level. DJ Reed may be slightly better, but I think in terms of relying on Brandon Echols next year or bringing in a guy of Carlton Davis's level, I think Carlton Davis is a really positive option. Sauce, Davis, MC2, I think that is a perfect solution to that cornerback room. And then maybe add a mid-round day 3 rookie in there, plus Stiggers as your depth. And you can look at this cornerback room right away going into next season still as a strength of this team. So Carlton Davis, another name that I like to throw out there. I think he would be a very right on line with DJ Reed, a very similar DJ Reed type of skill level type of player that can come in, mesh with Sauce, knows the defense already, knows what to expect out of an Aaron Glenn type of culture. And if the Jets really want to continue to follow that Detroit Lions blueprint, Davis could be another one of those additions. So 2 free agents that I just wanted to bring up. Tim Patrick, of course, in the Cimini article, wanted to dive into that a little bit more. And I also decided, let's throw Carlton Davis in there. I'll also have an article out on Carlton Davis here in the coming days. So if you want to get some of my thoughts on paper, I'll have that up here very soon on the Jet Press. All my articles for the Jet Press can be found in the Jet Press link down below to head on over to my author page. So 2 guys that I would certainly be on board with the Jets signing, and not only just on board, but I can certainly see the New York Jets signing. All right, let's move on here to the next topic, and that is Morgan Moses. I wanted to throw this up here on the screen. This was from Connor Hughes. This was the official report the other day from Connor Hughes in his article. It goes on to mention just all of the needs for the Jets, right? Cornerback, D tackle, linebacker, wide receiver 2 and 3. He also mentioned, this is the most important part here, right tackle Morgan Moses isn't expected to return. He also goes on to talk about the safety position and, of course, the tight end. And I'll tell you what, this is a little disappointing. Now, of course, this could change. This is just reporting. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is coming from the Morgan Moses side of things, where he's at the point of his career now where he might only have a year or 2 left, maybe, right? He's already 33 years old. He's been in the league since 2014. He's a warrior. He gets banged up a lot. He's nearing the end. He's going to be 34 by week 1. I believe he turns 34 in March. So I do understand the Morgan Moses side of this. If this was from Morgan Moses's camp, if this is more of a Morgan Moses decision, not wanting to return, where he wants to go to another team and have a chance to win now, win a Super Bowl before his career is over. Of course, the Super Bowl he does not have. The Jets side of it, though, I would have liked to seen Morgan Moses back. I look at this offensive line, and I would have been totally on board with, and I think it's just takes away of one less thing you need to address in the offseason, because the Jets have a lot of needs. We just went through 2 of the needs in Carlton Davis and Tim Patrick, wide receiver and cornerback. I just threw some of the other needs up here on the screen, right? 2 safeties, linebacker, defensive line. Now you need offensive line help. Quarterback is the biggest question of them all, right? Maybe you have your quarterback here for 2025 in Tyrod, but either way, you're going to need to figure out options behind him. You're going to need to figure out your future options still, whether that's this year, 2026, whatever. But I would have been on board with bringing him back. It's one less thing you need, and he was serviceable last year, and he's a good guy to have in the locker room. He's a leader. He's a warrior. I have a ton of respect for Morgan Moses. He was a very solid Jet for the year that he was here in 2021, and then very solid again last season. And I'm also totally on board with the idea of building up some continuity on this offensive line where you're returning the same 5 starters as you had towards the end of last season, after Tyron Smith was put on IR to have Olu Fashanu come out and play left tackle. He looked great. The offensive line was very, very good last year. And I would be totally okay with bringing Moses back on a one-year deal, or would have been totally okay with bringing Moses back on a one-year deal, drafting somebody, whether that's maybe going all in on a Will Campbell in the first round, which I don't love, but maybe drafting a guy, and not Will Campbell the prospect. I don't love the idea of going offensive line in the first round. I think the Jets are better off going other places in the first round than offensive line, but everybody's got a different opinion. Either way, though, taking some offensive lineman in the draft, whether that's day 1, day 2, day 3, and having him sit behind Moses for a year and then slotting that guy in for 2026. And then you have your 2 future tackles. Moses is still very serviceable. How about you have all 5 guys, continuity up front that you had last year? You go into training camp and you don't really have any questions at the position. You kind of know what to expect out of all 5 guys. Maybe you still have questions about Fashanu. He only played a couple games starting a left tackle, but looked very good. So I guess you have questions on if he can continue that. But other than that, Tittman played very well last year. You know what you're going to get out of AVT. John Simpson's in the prime of his career, coming off of a career year. Throw Moses back in there. You've had your best 5 guys that you've had in a very long time. I'm not saying it's going to tank the Jets season, but Morgan Moses is a guy I would have brought back. And who knows? Maybe this is more so Morgan Moses. Maybe this is more of the Connor Hughes is getting more of the Morgan Moses side of things where he doesn't want to come back. And if that's the case, I totally understand. I totally get it. He wants to win. Jets aren't set up to win a Super Bowl in 2025. Moses might only have a year or 2 left. He's going to want to go to a team that can win within the next year or 2. That's not the Jets. So I can understand that. But this is a guy last year that you look at some of, his numbers and his PFF stuff, right? He was above average, 63.3 overall grade. Is that elite? Is it great? No, but it was above average. And he's also cheap. He's affordable. His pass blocking grade, 69.2, run blocking grade, 60.6. All of those just around the average to above average mark. Bring him back for another year. Have a rookie sit behind him. I would have been okay with that. But that's not the choice they take. That's not what's going to happen. So you find yourself in the situation now where you need a right tackle. And I don't like any of the options on the roster, really. I'm not going to throw Max Mitchell out there. I'm not throwing Carter Warren out there. There is no way. You look at the rest of the free agent tackle market, it's pretty underwhelming. Morgan Moses is the best option out there. Other than that, though, you look at maybe a Trent Brown, maybe a Jedrick Wills. Then you get into like the Charlie Hex and Trenton Scott and some of these like depth guys that haven't really done a whole lot in their career as potential options. So I don't love that. Free agency isn't great. Again, you look at the draft, right? Will Campbell's the main first round one. But if you want to look at a guy, and this guy might go day 1, he might go late day 1, but you want to look at a guy in a Greg Zabel from North Dakota State, probably there's a good chance he doesn't get past round 1. But if he does, do you take him 42? Do you take him day 2 if he drops? Seems like he's kind of rising. I like him a lot. He's played both left tackle and right tackle. I like that versatility. I think he could be a guy that could really benefit from coming in and learning under a veteran for a year. Another guy is Armand Membu from Missouri, pure right tackle, probably more of a guy that you'll be able to get day 2, maybe day 3 from Missouri, who's, again, played right tackle his entire collegiate career. So do you look down that road of, do you go on a Will Campbell, or do you go down a road of taking a guy in the middle rounds, which the Jets have got to start hitting on middle round offensive line talent. And they also, not just to be starters, but they need to start hitting on middle round offensive talent to be quality depth, because the one problem with the Jets offensive line is there isn't any depth. The starters are good. And I'll just say that, like, the offensive line for the Jets, I feel, got a very bad rap. I think a lot of people don't give the Jets offensive line enough credit. I think it's a lot better than people make it out to be. I think a lot of people look at the struggles they had running the football last year and say, oh, the offensive line isn't good. It's not the offensive line. That is more so play calling and a scheme issue than it is offensive line. This is the best offensive line this team's had in pretty much a decade, which isn't saying much, but it's a lot better than people are making it out to be. The one issue, though, is the depth, right? Like Mitchell, Xavier Newman, Wes Schweitzer, those guys are I mean, Schweitzer's not terrible. You can move around, but Carter Warren, I mean, Warren and Mitchell are not really NFL caliber players. So you need to draft a guy. You need to hope he hits. Maybe you trade for a guy. Do you look at a guy like a Jack Conklin who maybe gets cut? They had some interest in him. I remember when he was coming out of Tennessee. Do you look down that avenue? It'll be interesting to see how they evaluate. But I would have personally brought Moses back, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And now you find yourself in a situation you're going to figure out right tackle, which, look, figuring out right tackle is a lot easier than figuring out left tackle, right? They got their left tackle of the future. I would much rather be in this spot than trying to find our left tackle. Feels like we got that guy in Olu. But now it's on. Draft, free agency, in-house, which I don't think is very realistic. We'll see. But Jets have a hole there. They got to fill. So let me know what you think in the comments section down below on today's episode. What are your thoughts on the possibility of Tim Patrick and Carlton Davis, 2 additions to 2 positions of need? And then your thoughts on the Jets not expected to retain Morgan Moses. We'll be back with a lot more content coming your way. Talk a lot more draft, talk a lot more free agency here. And, of course, any other news that comes out surrounding the New York Jets. So stay tuned. And until next time, Jets, 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 Jets.